Welcome back again, ladies and gentlemen. This is Elisa Ruffin with Leading Educators, and you are on the Grade 11 ELA Unit 6 Lesson Video Series, and we are in Week 8, Lesson 36. We started a new text this week called Housepainting, and you've done 2 first reads in 2 parts. You have done annotations for both parts. You've also done a summary and responded to some questions. Today, we're going to dive more deeply into the text, completing a close read, doing some annotations aligned to the close read, and then finishing things off with a quick write and closer. Before we get going on that though, always remember to share your learning with a family member, caregiver, or friend. Complete the weekly fluency activity using a page from the text, and do an additional 20 minutes of reading a day from a text of your choice. Before we get even deeper into the lesson though, as you know, it's that time of day where we do the riddle of the day. You also know by now that we have been doing riddle poetry, and I hope you've enjoyed the increased complexity and difficulty of these particular riddles, and that you've really been successful in figuring them out. So make sure that you're gathering around those people who've been a part of this process from the very beginning, if they're still interested, and that if it's you, because you like an individual challenge, that you get your mind right and ready to go, because here comes the riddle for today. At the back of every igloo and the middle of the moon, always running around in loops, you'll find me. If you look inside the room, what am I? At the back of every igloo and the middle of the moon, always running around in loops, you'll find me. If you look inside the room, what am I? So if you're not the type that wants spoilers, because as you know, I've been dropping hints this time, then my suggestion would be you pause the video right now, because I'm going to give a clue. And if you don't like clues because you want the thrill of figuring out without them, pause. Okay, for those of you who don't mind a little coaching, here we go. What I'd like you to do, if you think of each line, at the back of every igloo, at the middle of every moon, instead of thinking about these as actual objects, so in your brain, you're probably rooting around thinking, okay, how is the igloo constructed? What's the back of the igloo? What's really in the middle of the moon? What is it made of? Don't think that concretely. Think about the words themselves, not the objects they represent. Back of every igloo, middle of the moon, always running around in loops, you'll find me. If you look inside the room, right? So not the objects or things or places they represent, but the actual words themselves. Okay, pause the video if you need more time, because here comes the answer. It's a double O. Back of every igloo, double O. Middle of the moon, double O. Always running around in loops, double O. If you look inside the room, double O. So that's what I meant by thinking about the words themselves and not what the words represent. Okay, so this is a practice in making inferences, people. Reading between the lines, a much-needed skill, I should say, as it comes to unpacking literature. Now that we've done that, let's make sure that we actually have our materials for today. We need the house painting text, the learning packet, week 8, lesson 36 note catcher, pen or pencil, and a smartphone is optional as usual if you'd like to access the text digitally. Another reminder that we're reading the story Housepainting by Lan Samantha Chang, and that it's a fictional narrative text. It is connected to our central question, what do stories reveal about the human condition? And the specific guiding question for this text, how do people manage conflict between duty and desire? And now that you've read this story in its entirety, you should have a better idea of how that question, the guiding question, fits in the plot. Our learning targets for today are, I can identify parts of the story that describe the character's appearance, action, and feelings, and I can respond to the thoughts, feelings, and actions of the characters in the story. So we're going to see that aligned with the guidelines related to our close reading annotations for today. We are going to continue in our read, think, talk, write routine as we always do, and then close with a wrap-up activity to solidify that learning. You're going to do another read of the story from start to finish, no breaking it in parts this time. And as you read, you're going to do some annotating, and I will walk you through that more specifically in a moment. And then you're going to have a conversation with a family member, caregiver, or friend to talk about the question, how does the concept of face, and yesterday you talked about face and defined it before, impact the characters in the story? So you've already done this thinking work, so you should be ready to talk about it by now. And you're going to explain. In the right section, you're going to do a 5 to 7 sentence quick write that describes the relationship between Francis and Wade. This is the central part of the whole story, this interaction, this relationship, boyfriend-girlfriend between Francis and Wade. And you're going to cite specific evidence from the text to support your response. And then you're going to close with, do you think Francis loves Wade? Why do you think she agrees to marry? Explain. And you're going to cite evidence from the text. So if you recall, when you wrote the summary, I said summaries are not the place for your opinion. There's going to be ample opportunity for you to provide your opinion. Well, in the write and close section today, you are definitely going to get to express your opinion about the characters and the events in the story, but you're going to anchor that opinion in some examples from the text. So keep your eyes peeled, if you already have a strong point of view, for evidence to support that point of view as you read. So let's do a quick model, shall we? So going through the annotations for today, we're circling descriptive words or phrases that paint a picture of the character's thoughts or feelings. We are drawing quotation marks in the margins alongside any dialogue between characters and describing observations about the tone of the conversation. And we're writing down any questions that we have about the author's word choice, tone, or portrayal of the characters. So let's jump into the text. We're going to go back to a section that we read yesterday. And this scene, if you recall, is when Mom is in the kitchen cooking and Annie is asking questions about where her father is and what in the world Wade is doing. So we're going to revisit this passage, this time looking at it more closely. Okay. Since we've already read it, we won't go through the entire text again, but we'll just point out the important factors aligned to the annotations we're supposed to be doing. So I circled, why is Dad letting him be so helpful? And why had my father consented? Why was he accepting help from an outsider? So if you recall, this comes on the heels of Annie asking the question, why in the world is Wade outside painting the house? And we talked a little bit about this yesterday because we had the reaction of, why is this painting the house such a big deal? Because Annie is making it a big deal, so much so that she asked the question more than once. And she's contemplating why she really feels this kind of way about it, because she's like, I don't have the words for the right question. So she's trying to ask it, but ends up posing the same question again. And Mom just kind of dismisses her. But ultimately, what we hear and see in the reading is that Annie sees Wade as an outsider. And so she's trying to make sense of what's going on, because she is aware that there's more than meets the eye. She's aware that painting this house and Wade doing that and her father accepting help in this way indicates that Wade has been accepted into the family as more than just a stranger. And considering, as you know, since you've read it already, the action that's taken place before this scene and what information that Annie is privy to, which is she's overheard a conversation between Francis and her mother about how Francis feels. Francis is in tears, and how Francis is wrestling with whether or not she really cares about Wade and whether or not she really wants to be with him. So considering that Annie knows that, and considering the fact that Annie's mother knows that, Annie's confused about why Wade would be allowed to engage in this particular activity. Okay. So when you see the back and forth between Annie and her mother again kind of dismisses her and says he just wants to be helpful. All right, that's it. Don't read anything into it. What we see here is that Annie doesn't seem to be buying that Wade's motives are to just be helpful, because if Wade is Shaoxun, right, and he is aware of customs just like Francis is, he also knows what it means to be allowed to help in this way to the family. Okay, so it's not just about, hey, let me help you paint the house. It can mean more than that, and Annie is aware, right? So she may be concerned about Wade's motives and intentions because she knows how her sister really feels, right? Because she overheard that conversation, right? So those are our annotations for today. We've done our circling, we've identified dialogue, and we've written our responses, all of which helps us really understand the character's thoughts and feelings and get our minds around what's really happening, and also helps us get a better idea of what the theme of the text may be. All right, so it's really coming into the picture here. Now it's your turn to complete a close read of the text from start to finish. You're going to be circling descriptive words or phrases that paint a picture of the character's thoughts or feelings while you're reading, drawing quotation marks in the margin beside any dialogue between characters and describing your observations, and writing down any thoughts or questions that you have about the author's word choice, tone, or portrayal of characters in the margins of the text. Lots to annotate, I believe, in this story here, especially with the close read. And don't forget to have that conversation with your family member, caregiver, or friend about the question, how does the concept of face impact the characters in the story? Make sure to explain that and provide examples from the text. So you're going to pause right here for a moment. You're going to read through the story again and complete those close read annotations so that you're prepared for the write and close for today. And when you come back, I will model that for you. So go ahead and pause the video here. All right, welcome back. Right now that you've read the story more closely, I hope that the theme is coming into better and clearer view for you so that it's kind of solidifying some of your preliminary thoughts, that you've gotten to know the characters more deeply, and that you're ready for this quick write. So the quick write is a 5 to 7 sentence paragraph that describes the relationship between Frances and Way. This is where you really get to think through some of the preliminary reactions that you've had to their interactions, as well as some of the conversations that have been had outside of their interactions. So that being said, in order to engage in this quick write, I need to identify the parts of the story when Frances and Way are interacting with each other directly, right? So, and there are plenty of moments in this story where Frances and Way are having conversations. And so how are they interacting? Consider not just their dialogue, but also consider the descriptive language around it, because the narrator is observing Frances and Way from a very specific point of view. That's her sister. And they've been dating for 4 years. Okay, so you're going to have some insights from Annie. You're also going to have the dialogue between Frances and Way. Okay, what did you notice about their interaction? You also need to consider what's happening outside of their interaction, meaning, what does Frances share with her mother and sister when Way is not present? Okay, this is either going to support or contradict the observations you made based on the direct interaction between Frances and Way. Is there a difference between the two? Is there a difference in the way in which Frances conducts and carries herself when she's interacting with Way, where you get a wholly different impression about her feelings and their relationship than how she communicates with her mother and sister about Way? Or are they similar, and do you get clues about her actual feelings in her interactions with Way? So there's a lot to put together there. So again, you have the explicit things that you see in their interactions there, and then you have the reading between the lines you have to do if there's a disconnect between what she's saying to her family and how she's actually interacting with Way. Right? So you should have some fun with that one. And then closing. Once you've done all that work and thinking through and describing, now you're going to think through, do you think Frances actually loves Way? Why do you think she agrees to marry? Explain. So you consider how the story connects love and marriage. Okay, that's going to help you answer the second part of that question. And you'll be able to better respond to it as a result, because you've already done the work, the heavy lifting mentally, and the note taking and the combing through the text to answer the first part of the question. All we're asking is for you to have an opinion now. So you've gathered evidence, you've read through the text, you've examined and evaluated the interactions between the characters and their conversations, and you have formulated an opinion by now. Okay, so now that you have that opinion, you can be able to answer that question, and then you're going to have to think about the connection between love and marriage and talk about why you think Frances actually decides to marry Way based on what you think her feelings are. All right, now that we walked through that, it's your turn to complete the quick write and then to write your response to the question in the closing section of, do you think Frances loves Way, and talk about why you think she agreed to marry him. I think really interesting story and activities today. I hope that you enjoy it, and I hope that you too find it interesting as well. If you need additional help, remember you can pause and replay this video as many times as you need, and you can reach out to a teacher via email for direct support using the information provided. And when you're done, make sure that you're sharing your learning with a family member, caregiver, or friend, that you're doing the weekly fluency activity using a page from the story, and you're doing some additional reading, at least 20 minutes a day from a text of your choice. We've come to the end of another lesson today, folks. I look forward to going into our analysis of the story tomorrow. We're going even deeper, so it's going to be exciting. And I know that you're going to be prepared to succeed in the activities today, as well as those on deck for tomorrow. Until then, see you next time.